Alright, thought I'd talk a little bit about the difference between a track bike and a road bike. And this is a really, really good example because these are effectively for exactly the same rider, exactly the same weight. Kind of see people using themselves over race parts and race setups and, you know, asking about race tyres and all sorts of different pressures and things like that related to race bikes for their actual road bikes. So I thought this would be a really good example of how different the two things can be for a club level racer as well, between their track bike and their road bike. So I think the clearest distinction between the two, and to show you how different they should be set up, is simply talking about the tyre pressures between a track bike and a road bike. And this is something people don't think a lot about. So for a road bike, what you want to do is, no matter what tyre you're putting on it, the general rule of thumb is always going to be that you set the tyre pressure or what the manufacturer recommends for that bike, irrespective of really your brand or your tyre type. So you're really going off like the compliance plate, or you use a manual, and that's pretty much a set and forget. So your cold temperature, set them up. So your rear tyre on your road bike is always going to be at a higher pressure than your front tyre on your road bike. And as I said, it's always going to be set up depending on the actual bike itself, not on the tyre type. In contrast to a track bike, and what you want to do is you want to set it up based on the actual tyre type. So when you get your tyres, you're either your tyre tech or someone who sets your bike up who's a tyre tester will tell you the actual pressure that you want to run your tyre at, hot off the tyre warmer. And clear distinction again, your road bike, your rear tyre is always going to be higher than your front tyre. On a race bike or a track bike, your front tyre pressure is actually going to be far higher than your rear. So that should tell you that your road bike is going to be set up very, very differently from your track bike, because you're effective. So this one's a 2012 ZX10. So Simone, my wife, rides this pretty much as a track hack. So it's nice and reliable, used effectively. So the front forks are pretty much standard in this. A lot of people with race bikes and stuff go for cartridges and whatnot. These are pretty standard. It has got a race shock on the back, so it gives you a little bit of adjustability, but it also came with the bike when we bought it. So if it hadn't have got it on it, generally probably find a standard shock that's been altered would work out quite well at the moment. But if you were to draw a imaginary horizontal line through the center of the bike above the line of the ground, and this is sitting on both its wheels, what you would see is that the front of the bike sits a little bit higher than the back of the bike. Or if you were to draw like almost like a center of gravity line through the bike, so a center line through the bike, it would be pitched a little bit like that. So it's carrying less weight on the front. And what we've done here is basically over a lot of trial and error, and as Simone's gotten faster, we've ended up sort of working to the stage where the back's gotten quite a bit softer, the front's gotten quite a bit stiffer as well. So now the front's running quite a lot higher spring rate, or not a lot higher spring rate, but definitely a higher spring rate than what you would set up off the shelf for a rider of her weight. And also as well, the geometry of it's been raised a little bit in the front. So what that's done is it's made it nice and easy to kind of turn in. It's a little wider on the front as well. It's a common mistake that people think that when they want the bike to be easier to turn in, they start loading up the front, so they push the forks up to the triple clamps. The best example of that I saw was a couple of years ago at a race meeting. I remember someone complaining, and they pushed their forks right through, and they were saying the bike's still really, 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 really hard to steer to get it into corners. And what I think was occurring at that time was that the person was actually, when they were tipping in, the thing would tip in so fast that they would actually tighten their muscles to stop the thing tipping in too much. But then they're taking that as feedback of like they've got to wrestle the bike to turn it in, whereas probably the fact the bike was kind of falling over on itself and they were instinctively holding it, trying to keep it stable. So I've actually found now that taking the weight off the front of the bike makes it nice and easy to turn in and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much the clear distinction with that. If we go over to this bike, which is a 2010 Buell XB12, you'll see the forks are actually sitting through a little bit here, right like that. And again, if you were to draw like a center of gravity line or a center of balance line, it would sit a lot more flat than the other bike too. Again, standard forks, although these forks have been swapped in from an 1125 Buell. So standard, this was an XB12Ss. So what it had was it had the long travel suspension in conjunction with the long swing arm and the longer frame. So quite long lengthwise and quite tall in its height. And what we sort of found was when Simone was initially riding it, it'd kind of get head shake because it was very, very light on the bike. So what I ended up doing is putting in a 5-volt shock in that, which was just rebuilt, kept it quite standard. Really doesn't run much preload at all, so it sits again quite soft in the bike, which is another similarity with the race bike as well. But then the 1125 forks sort of lowered it a little bit and sat it a little bit lower on the front of the bike as well. Funnily enough, for a road bike, that actually kept it a little bit more weight evenly on the front, so made it a lot more stable, actually travelling down the road too. So when it was kind of riding along quite quickly before with really no weight on it, a really light rider, the front would get quite light and jiggle around quite a bit just because of effectively you think about all your undulations, your potholes, your tracks in the road would travel up, and when it's sort of quite stiff, it's sitting quite light on the front, that would just sort of travel through almost like energy traveling through the forks. I think it's about 0.9, so it's very, very light spring. So the real nice thing about this bike is it's really nice and compliant. It's also lowered a little bit in the front too, just a tiny little bit, not much. So the dampening's up a little bit more in the front, just to take some of that energy out with the reduced travel and the lighter spring. But really nice and compliant, really nice and confidence inspiring down the road, as well as a lot of bumps and all that sort of stuff. And sits quite stable too. If you're riding hard on a road bike, you're never really going to be charging the entry of those corners like you will on a race bike. So you sort of really don't need to kind of anticipate that load as you're entering corners and braking zones and whatnot as well. So Simone will really only be using the front brake on this. So yeah, the back brake doesn't get a lot of use with that as well. So back brake fluid change doesn't get changed much at all. Front brake fluid gets changed pretty regularly. And we run that brake fluid down a little bit from the top to allow for that expansion of the brake fluid, which I talked about a little bit more in depth with the Triumph brake video as well about that. As opposed to the road bike, the back brake gets used quite a bit, and anyone who rides on the road will sort of know about how you use the back brake, you know, particularly if you're in around traffic and things like that, or you know, slow riding and things like that. But in particular as well with this bike, the back brake gets used a lot more because of the engine characteristics. So there's no slipper clutch, and also the engine's being based on the Harley Sportster V-twin, there isn't much engine braking at all. It's very heavy reciprocating weights. If you think about when you let off, so if you're coming up to a corner, if you're riding quite quickly and you let off that throttle, it still wants to give you quite a bit of run on, that engine mass still rotating and still trying to drive the bike into the corner through the back wheel, so even if you're braking. So generally the way to counter that is to use your back brake as well, and generally try and get the lever positions in reference to the pedal, to like the brake lever in particular. Try and get those pretty consistent between the race bike and the road bike, just the feel. Similar thing with the handlebars, so brake lever and clutch lever. However, because this is pretty much a naked bike, upright bike, as opposed to a sports bike, that would be different anyway. But if this was like a sports bike, I'd look to get that lever position very much the same. And the reason for that is if you're riding along, you want to be able to, without thinking, you don't want to feel for the brakes. So if someone's riding along, they don't ever want to have to feel for it in an emergency situation. It wants to be there all the time with what they're used to. That one's road pattern, so whichever that works out to be, 1 down, 4 up, something like that with a 5-speed. And that one's race pattern as well. So the reason you run race pattern on the track bike is that if you're leant over and you want to shift up to go up a gear, so if you want to go second to third, you want to click down to do that as well. So that means you don't have to get your foot underneath to pull up. So particularly on those corners where you're like bending over. So I'm sure everyone knows about that. Everyone is anyone. Main takeaway from this is that you want to start to develop the bikes for, if it's you or if it's someone you take care of the bike for, you want to develop it based on their feedback. So I still think for a road bike you want to go, for a race bike, sorry, or a track bike, bike should be all about confidence and comfort of riding, so a rider isn't getting too tired out with it. So make it nice and easy to kind of steer the bike, stop the bike. Even ergonomic wise, you want to get it pretty comfortable so people are kind of moving around on it nicely. And a lot of people don't really think about that from a rider perspective, particularly at club level racing, because they're kind of going, oh yeah, you know, it's like 5 or 6 laps, what's it going to matter? They think that's something that's going to be more applicable over like 20 lap races or something like that. I don't think that's the case. I think, you know, if you kind of think about comfort for a rider, even if you think about muscle use, thinking about all the blood flow through the muscles, the oxygen flowing through with the blood flow to oxygenate all those cells, ease of moving around on the bike as well, and that comfort and that ability to, if they need to do something quickly, instinctively, not have to move out of an uncomfortable position. That could be the situation, the difference between potentially an accident and being hurt, and just being able to react quite quickly in a really comfortable position and move about quite easily as well, which comes down to bike rider fitness too. So that's sort of what you want to achieve with the track bike ride. For a road bike, it should be compliance, I think, for the road. Even if you're like a road riding hero, you want to be faster than all your mates, generally always want to go for what's the easiest thing to ride. Good example of that as well is the tyre difference. If you were to sort of take like a cardboard shape, like a cardboard pattern of the overall radius of this tyre or the front tyre, what you find is there'd be a lot more triangular in their shape. So again, that means the bike wants to fall over really quickly. Again, so coming back to what I was saying about getting the bike to set up so it actually, you know, is quite easy to tip in. So it wants to fall over really fast, that edge of the tyre too. So that's with the front and the rear of the tyre. Generally with a road bike, you don't really want that. What you want is you want feedback all the time. So these are the Continental Road Attack 3s, which have a lot more of a round curve. So again, if you were to take a template of this, it wouldn't be triangular, it would be quite rounded. So the great thing about that is you can pretty much put the bike at any sort of lean angle you want quite confidently and quite easily. Even if you want to tip it over quite fast, you still can do that. But generally you sort of want to get it, if you were to look at that edge of the tyre, pretty easily put it at any point on that edge of the front or the rear of the tyre, which would generally be at the rear of the tyre. But you want to be able to get it at any sort of lean angle you want and hold it there quite easily. Whereas with the peakier tyres that have a lot more triangular shape, they really just want to fall to the side quite quickly. So that's where people can also tend to get themselves in trouble on the road as well, as they'll overcommit to that inside line and end up, you know, smacking something going the other way, or run off the road, or cut a corner or something like that. The other thing is the working temperature of the tyres. So these, your tyre warmers, if you're going for commercial tyre warmers, they'll go anywhere between 60 and 90 degrees Celsius. And then you want to set your tyre pressure based on what it comes off track. But your tyre pressure, your tyre temps will probably still be around, like, I don't know, at a stab in the dark any given day, between like 50 and 70 something degrees Celsius when they come off track. And slicks and, like, you know, high level track day tyres or race tyres, even if they aren't slicks, are designed to operate in that temperature as well. And your road bike, you'll never ever get them to that temperature as well. So what you want to do with a road bike is really pick a tyre that's going to have a really nice working temperature to it as well. Again, even if you're someone who wants to be like a, you know, road racing reefed and spur hero, having a tyre that only operates in that temperature range is really going to reduce your ability to ride well, because it's going to take away that confidence in it. So these road attacks are really good. If you kind of look at if you're looking at the tread here with them, it's got quite a wide tread in it, and compound actually feels quite soft too. But these have been on here for quite a while. They've sat in the sun. There hasn't really been an issue with it. The great thing about these is you can take them out on a really cold, like I've got these on mine, I've taken them out when it's been like 1 degree Celsius outside, and they've been really, really confidence inspiring. Also as well, when they get worked really hard, they're really confidence inspiring as well. So, you know, if you're kind of going through shaded spots on the road, cold spots on the road, wherever it may be, you kind of want something that's going to heat up really well, heat up really quickly, and also operate really well. So again, I think these treads, these big cuts in them, help that as well, because that flex in the carcass will get everything kind of up to operating temperature and stuff too. So yeah, so I think that's about it. 2 bikes, the same rider, very different purposes, set up very, very differently as well. So you've got a very level bike, 6 quite level, 6 quite flat, sprung very, very softly, emphasis being on that compliance and confidence inspiring too, with a tyre that operates almost like a sport touring range. It operates at any temperature, gives a really good feel through it as well, which is a good advantage of these tyres, and that flexibility, you kind of get that feel through the tyre as well. So you're pretty much riding the road and feeling the road as you're travelling along it. Race bike, almost the opposite in many ways. It's up very stiff at the front, very tall at the front, break back, with tyres that are almost shaped like a triangle, that have a very narrow heat range and operating temperature. Yeah, that's about it. And again, both of them have been evolved based on what Simone has sort of, what I've either seen, observed, or feedback she's given me. And yeah, you kind of move along, and that's still the journey as well. So as she continues to get faster, things will change again on the race bike in particular, but I think the road bike's going to stay pretty much the same as it is. So yeah, so I think that's about it. Takeaways, I don't know, race stuff isn't always the best for your road bike. That's probably a takeaway from that. And set up based on feedback, whether it's you or the person you're working with. So yeah, that's about it. And don't listen to people online, because they don't know shit. Simone, are these your motorcycles?
2 or 5 of them.
Yeah, yeah. So what are the differences between these 2 bikes?
Very, very, very quick.
Yep.
Very battered and scarred.
Yep.
This one's perfect.
It is. Future collector's item.
Yeah, I don't want to crash this one. Whereas this one, yeah, it has copped a lot of abuse. Clearly, like the bike's still heavy. It's nicknamed the beast. So you know, it's hard for someone little to throw around.
And how much do you weigh?
That's 53 kilos.
Yeah.
Give or take.
So for a 180 kilo super bike, effectively.
Yeah, so I'm working a lot harder throwing this bike around the corners than anyone else. So, you know, we've got to set up the best that it can be at the moment.
Without spending big money on it and changing things drastically. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a track hack that I, you know, do a couple of entry levels that are events on as well, just for a bit of extra track time. But yeah, it's the go-to, the one that's going to last. It's the one that, you know, doesn't need all the maintenance. It's not, you know, highly strung like
a
Triumph
600,
Green.
yeah.
So it's the one that, you know, is pretty much just a turnkey race bike all the time.
It's geared quite tall too as well, so it doesn't get that thrashing.
Yeah, and because I'm lazy with my, you know, lack of gear changes and, you know, it's just extra effort.
Tell me about the Buell.
As you can tell, it's Satan's finest machine. I don't know whether that's bike or rider, but it's probably a combination of both. Yeah, it's amazing. I've had it since 2012, I think.
2013, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. 2010 model, last of the XBs.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's a fun, talky little thing to ride. Did go on a really awesome ride about a year ago, up into northeastern Vic, I think, where I tested out the full extent of the Contis, and absolutely amazing. Rode really, really hard with the others. Never ridden that hard on road before, the condies just didn't fail at all. They were just super confidently firing, never lost any grip or.
And they're a touring tyre too, they're not a sports tyre.
And
So,
their wear is like you'd never think that it's been thrashed the way it has. So yeah, really impressed with the condies. They're great.
how'd this bike handle when you first got it?
Oh, I hated it. You'd go to pass someone over, overtake someone, or just be riding along with me into the pothole. And I mean, admittedly, I don't like it at all. Like any sort of head shakes, don't like it at all. It's fine when it's just a little one, but these used to get really big ones. So yeah, the 1125 Force has been a really, really good thing. Really stable. Doesn't matter what I throw at it now, and it just handles it. So it's great.
And it's set up quite light, spring rate wise too.
Yeah, it's set up
So
properly
almost
for my
like
weight
the
as well.
opposite of your race bike.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, like you said before, you're not doing heavy braking on that one.
So-
Bike anyway.
Got some black forks to go on there as well from the 1125CR.
Yeah.
So
really
basically
good.
get those internals put into some CR forks. Because obviously originally this bike was all black, had black forks as well as the black frame, black wheels, and black engine. So good to get the black forks back on there. So yeah, track bike, road bike, very different. So I don't know, any questions? Ask or don't. What do you reckon, Rusty?